Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 18 of What to Think, VentureBeat's technology news podcast. I'm Dylan Tweeney.
And I'm Kia Kokolacheva.
Today we'll be talking to Kathryn Gould, a former VC and the founder of Foundation Capital. But first, some tech news highlights from VentureBeat.com. Here are three of our most interesting stories from the last week. Take it away, Kia.
Well, first, a little company called Life360 had some news, some legal news for us. So when patent holder Aegis unleashed a patent lawsuit against the company, Chief Executive Chris Hall replied with a very candid letter. You should really read it. It's crazy. Now that the company is taking another step in its quest to squash the patent lawsuits, which it believes is unwarranted. So it's publicly releasing prior art and invalidity contentions worth more than $100,000 in legal costs. And for those of you who don't know, prior art is when you look for publicly available references or information about something that you might want to patent. And if it's out there, then you can't because it's just public knowledge.
So in Life360's case, this is the idea of putting little icons representing people on a map that you can then tap on in the app to communicate with them, right? And Aegis is saying they have a patent on this.
Right. So basically what Life360 wants to do is to show that this has been around for a long time before they even patented it, and it just is not a valid point.
All right, so what should people think about this news story, Kia?
Well, besides the Chris Hall letter that I recommend everyone should read again because it's quite entertaining, it's just kind of this another one of these crazy things that's happening in Silicon Valley. I mean, Life360's whole point with putting all this information out there publicly is just to help other startups that could be targeted.
By patent trolls,
yeah.
Which are a huge pain for startups because as soon as somebody raises enough money that they get on the radar screen, somebody pops out saying, I've got a patent. Sorry, you can't do that.
Well, the thing is, Life360 got hit with the lawsuit the same week that they announced that they raised $55 million. So,
no coincidence.
So they have money to do something about it. But if you're this tiny 3-person startup in a garage that's making some sort of location map app with zero money in the bank, you can't settle, you can't fight, you can't do anything about it. So,
well, I'll tell people what to think. Basically, all these problems would go away if the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office did a better job of vetting patent applications and not issuing so many garbage patents. So there. So our next story is about the theft of data from 4.5 million patients last week from a hospital network called Community Health Systems. They got hacked, basically. Community Health Systems insist that nobody actually lost any health records. What was stolen were things like social security numbers and names. That's very comforting, right?
Yeah.
But information is now coming out about the source of the attack, and it appears to be a Chinese hacker group. So cybersecurity company FireEye and its Mandiant division looked into the CHS hacked, and they've now learned quite a lot about the group that was rampaging through their databases. And specifically, they call this group APT-18, which is short for Advanced Persistent Threat Group Number 18. And we don't know for sure. APT-18 might be backed by the Chinese government. FireEye would not confirm this, but it's quite likely, and there are a lot of good reasons why the Chinese government might be starting to target healthcare companies. For one thing, healthcare is a big problem in China. Cancer rates are on the rise, and there are other issues, and they might be looking for clinical data that could help them improve the health of their own population. And the other is just pure monetary information espionage, getting data that they can use to make money, which is the classic hacker motivation.
Right. I don't know. To me, this is all kind of crazy. If it's true that they only stole the not worrisome social security numbers and names, I'm not quite sure how that would help them with their cancer research.
Good point.
I don't know. None of this makes sense to me. I'm not sure what China's doing. Good luck to everyone involved.
Well, if you talk to security professionals, it's clear that China is an increasingly large source, whether it's government-backed or not. A lot of hack attacks are coming out of China, and they're usually targeted at commercial or military.
Right.
But this story proves that healthcare is not immune to this kind of attack either. So healthcare people, tighten up your security networks. Do you want to do the next one, Kia?
Sure. All right.
It's about Amazon.
Yeah. Oh, man. Amazon.
They bought Twitch.
They did.
Now, this was surprising news. I'm just going to jump in here. It was surprising news to us because we had run a story a month ago, full disclosure here, where we thought we had confirmed that Google was buying Twitch. Now, Twitch is the company that streams video of video game, people playing video games. We thought that Google had buttoned up the acquisition, but then it emerged this week that actually Google lost the deal and Amazon is buying Twitch instead for $970 million in cash.
That's crazy.
So, Kia, why is Amazon interested in Twitch?
Why does Amazon care about people watching other people play video games?
That's a good question.
I mean, that's what it is. You know, as not someone that's in the gaming industry, I have no idea. But with that said, Amazon is just kind of becoming this giant media, giant. And they have everything. They're taking on Google. They're taking on, the bookstores. They're taking on everybody that's anywhere in the media business.
They're taking on publishers in the book business, right? They want to be a full stack provider. They have software, they have hardware, they have services for sure with Amazon Web Services and many other offerings, and they have content.
Yep. So I'm also seeing this as kind of like I don't want to call it a marketing play, but they have a lot of video game sales going on. They're in that business. They also have Amazon Web Services, which is what hosts Twitch. So it's kind of, I feel like this almost fits into their ecosystem, that they could use Twitch for game discovery, promotion, all sorts of other things like that. So why not?
And they do seem to be interested in making the Fire tablet and Fire phone into game devices, as well as Fire TV could possibly be a game console as well. So this might fit into that. Just to answer your question, who wants to watch video of people playing video games? I ask myself that question all the time, but apparently there are a lot of people. Twitch has 55 million monthly viewers, and some nights it has more viewership than major cable TV channels.
Well, so basically Amazon just bought itself a good chunk of the gaming community.
That's exactly right.
There you have it.
Yeah. It's for people who are really into games, Twitch is it. And it's more than just passively watching video, too. It's very interactive. So who knows? Maybe this is the future of interactive TV with, content that's more than just video games. We'll see.
Yep.
Well, before we go to our guest, I'd like to offer a shout out to our host and sponsor, software analytics maker New Relic. We are actually broadcasting from New Relic's podcasting studio here in downtown San Francisco. New Relic makes sense of billions of metrics across millions of web and mobile apps to help the people who build modern software understand the stories their data is trying to tell them. New Relic's products, which support PHP, Python, Ruby, Java, .NET, Node, iOS, and Android apps, help improve software performance and reliability to provide a better experience for users and more success for your business. And now let's welcome our guest, Kathryn Gould. She was one of the first women venture capitalists anywhere. After a successful career at Oracle, she started a headhunting firm, then joined a VC firm called Merrill Pickard, and she later started Foundation Capital. Now she's helping people start their own venture firms, and she's also a serious wine grower, and she recently gave a commencement speech at the University of Chicago that's filled with advice for graduates who want to make it in tech. So Kathryn, welcome to What to Think.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here. So I guess my first question is, you were one of the first women VCs, and that field is still really largely dominated by men. I think the stat you cited in your piece that ran on VentureBeat a few weeks ago was it's 96% male, according to Fortune. Do you think your experience differed from that of women who are entering VC today?
Interestingly enough, no, I don't think it's different at all. It's still very much a man's world, and I don't see it changing very quickly. I mean, in part because to really get into the venture capital business, you need to bring something to the party. And one of the things people usually bring to the party is a technical undergrad degree for starters. And still only 15% of engineering and hard science majors are women. And so until that changes, I don't think it's obvious that the number of women in venture capital is going to grow.
There's just not that much upstream supply.
Exactly. And so I think the trouble's back in high school as far as, women getting into this kind of business. And the other thing, of course, is that to get into the venture business, you need to really bring something, as I said, which means you probably need to have worked in a startup, maybe at a successful startup, preferably, and at a high level, VP or CEO. And so to do that takes the education I talked about, but it also takes a lot of years. And so
that seems almost like a more of a qualifying criterion than the undergraduate degree, based on the VCs I'm talking to now. That operational experience seems to count for a lot, unless you're one of those people who got an MBA and sort of does the finance thing and approaches it from that angle.
Yeah, but that's not a very good way, because you have to look at yourself as, if you were an entrepreneur starting a company, who would you want on your board? I mean, you want somebody who's been there, done it, and can really help you through the hard times. And so that's usually, engineering, marketing, and sales.
My question, though, to you would be, do you think that that's like the same bar is there for men and women? Like, obviously women, we have to like totally bring something to the party, but do you think there's like a lower bar for men? I mean, Ashton Kutcher is an investor. He's never ran a startup.
Yeah, I suppose slightly lower bar. I'm not sure that's as big a deal as just that there's relatively few women that get the operational experience needed to do this. And if you have a successful startup and you make some money, it's not clear you want to go beat your head against the venture capital wall for the next 20 years, right? Because like a lot of women, if they make some money by the time they're 40, they're going like, gee, I might want to have some children or something.
Or grow wine, right?
Well, I didn't start that till I was really, really old. I wouldn't recommend that as a path to anywhere except getting a good suntan. So.
Well, they do say the secret to making a small fortune in the wine business is to start with a large fortune, right?
Yeah, I'm proving that once again.
Well, okay, so that male dominatedness, right? It sounds like your position is that that's not really the fault of the venture industry. It's that, there's some upstream kind of structural reasons why that's the case. Did it drive you crazy, or was it just kind of like a fact of life that you had to deal with, like, I don't know, traffic or the weather or something?
I like working with men, so it didn't drive me crazy at all. In fact, my background, I have a degree in physics. Mm-hmm. I kind of started that when I was 18, and at the time there were really, really few women in physics.
Where did you do your undergraduate?
University of Toronto. Mm-hmm. And so there were very few women then. So I've been surrounded by men my whole working life. I don't know if I would even know what to do in a woman-dominated field. So it didn't drive me crazy, and I'm not sure at all that it was a disadvantage for me, except, if you remember in my graduation speech, I did talk about how when I was between Merrill Pickard and starting Foundation, if I were a guy, I do think I would have been offered a job like instantly.
Because your track record was so good.
Yeah, duh. And so I do think that hiring a woman into an all-male firm, which almost all of them are, took extra partner meetings to figure out if they wanted to do that. And so while they were diddling around, I was freaking out like, oh, okay, well, I just got to get going here. Because the reason I was freaking out was that venture investing is kind of a momentum thing. You have everything in your head, everything that's going on in the valley, all the right people. And if you sort of miss a few beats by being out for a year, then it takes probably 2 years to catch up. I just didn't want to go there.
So do you think that since you were in physics in college and you were surrounded by boys and then you went to VC and more of that, do you think being used to being in a boys club just kind of made you ignore it and go for it, and it just didn't matter anymore and made it easier?
Totally did. Made it very easy for me. Because, as I said, I like working with men. I'd done that all my life. I looked around in the room and they were all men. I couldn't see myself, right? I always wore like pink and red suits and stuff, so they could see me, but I couldn't see them. So for me, it was kind of business as usual. And I think, actually, I'm quite sure, as far as entrepreneurs were concerned, all those guys care about is who can help them make their company successful. That they could really give a shit,
Right.
What other things were going on there. I think if there was any issue, it was probably with the other venture capitalists around the table.
You do mention, though, in that piece, you mentioned that you got an epithet. I think the nice version of it was Dragon Lady, though, right?
Yeah, right. I got that secondhand from my pals in the business, and that was actually more operating guys than VCs. I think one of the things about me that anybody would tell you if you talk to people of my ancient vintage, was that I was pretty quick on the trigger when things were going wrong at the company operationally or with a manager that I didn't think was cutting it. I usually acted first, and I would usually have to talk the rest of the venture guys into what I was going to do and then go do it. So there's no question that I don't suffer fools. And so I think the Dragon Lady thing, word got out about that. You know, you screw up like multiple times and, you know, you're gone.
Right.
and of course, I hide behind Don Valentine, one of the great of the previous generation to me, who always said, yeah, I never fired a CEO too soon. And I'm going like, yeah, me neither.
Yeah, nobody called him a dragon man, right?
No, but they did call him lots of stuff.
I'm sure they called him names behind his back too. Yeah, no doubt. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is you wrote that you developed, you know, between the time I think that you were working at Oracle and when you got your first VC job, you started a headhunting firm that would prove to be your entree into VC. And you said you developed a deadly accurate intuition about people and an unbeatable set of contacts. I'm curious because I think that's something that anybody operating in Silicon Valley in tech right now would love to be able to develop. Like, can you tell us how you did that? How you got an accurate intuition?
Well, firstly, I was being a headhunter. I was in the business of having a lot of contacts. Okay. Mm-hmm. But I spent a lot, obviously interviewed probably 5 or 6 people a day. And I got really good at cold calling. So I would call anybody I felt like talking to and somehow engage them on the phone and get them to meet with me. And that was kind of neat. And I always, whenever I met somebody or talked to somebody, I say, okay, who are the 3 smartest people you know? And I've always been focused on smartest people because maybe it's less true now, but for sure it was true in the beginning. When you're dealing with a brand new industry, there aren't people with experience that have done it before. So all you've got is smarts. Mm-hmm. So I've always made a study of who are the smartest people. And all the guys that work with me in Foundation, I always said, okay, keep your list of your 20 smartest people and just like, you just work with those guys, you will get great startups. And so that's always something I've done. And another weird thing is that I have this weird memory so that when I meet somebody and they tell me about their background and about the 5 companies they've worked for, I always know 3 or 4 people that know them. And it always like pops into my head. So I always say, oh, so you must know so-and-so. And so I'm sort of deadly as far as reference checks. You know, when you give somebody your references, you give them the good guys, right?
Your favorites, yeah.
Well, I always knew who to call. So it wasn't just my own intuition. It was also my own ability to ferret out the truth. And most of the people I worked with over the years, like I knew them for a pretty long time. So I was able to track them. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the other skill I have is this weird thing where people talk to me and they tell me like everything. And so I developed the ability to be a really good listener. And I can remember, meeting a bunch of people over my years who would then report to other people, oh, she was such a fascinating person. And then I would go, you know what's funny? I didn't say a damn word. I was listening. But people think you're fascinating when you're listening, which is very interesting. So
that's a technique that works really well for journalists, too. Let me just...
Yeah, so you guys are fascinating. Of course, I'm doing all the talking right now, but... Now, the Valley's changed a lot. In my day, believe it or not, I knew every company and every person. Like in the 80s, it was possible to do that. You know, I knew
much bigger now, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, semiconductor, enterprise software, which is really small. There was hardly any consumer stuff. It was just like personal computers. You know, I knew all this. Now, it would drive me nuts. I think a human could maybe know 1/20th, 1/50th of what's going on. So I think you'd have to specialize now to have the kind of network I had.
So since you brought up how huge the industry is now, do you think that your approach would really work, especially since there's so much like smoke and mirrors around and you don't know who to trust, who to believe? Like, how would that approach be different now that there's so many people?
I think there's percentage-wise the same amount of smoke and mirrors. That's a staple of the industry. But I do think if I were to be in the venture business now, I would have to specialize. I mean, I personally would specialize in enterprise software.
Is that because of your background or because you think that's where the opportunity is now?
It's because of my background. I believe you have to do what you know. Like, at Foundation Capital, some of our guys would say, oh, we have to do these incredible medical deals. And I'm like, we don't know shit about that. We should not. And so we never did. So enterprise software is what I know. So I can detect the smoke and mirrors easily in that field. Whereas if I were to go to even the consumer internet, which everybody thinks they understand, I think I could probably be taken for a ride in that. So I think it is best to specialize in something that you have so much insight into that you can detect the bullshit.
I want to ask you two questions about the investing business. One is, you talk about your lifetime IRR, the internal rate of return for your investors, being 90%. I know that's a huge number. That's an incredibly successful rate of return. But for our less financially savvy listeners, can you explain what that means compared to, the typical VC return?
Well, yeah. So the Cambridge Associates, which tracks venture returns, the average rate of return over the last 10 years in venture capital is 11.7%. Ew. That's not bad. You put some money away and you make 11.7%. That's not so bad.
Uh-huh.
But the three funds that I was most closely involved with, Merrill Pickard and the early foundation funds, all had IRRs in the 100% area.
So they're returning more than doubling the invested money.
Well, doubling every year.
Every year.
Annual.
Yeah.
So like Merrill Pickard and foundation funds have returned 8 times their money.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So, it doesn't happen every day, and it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
How did you do it?
Well, I have a really different view than most venture capitalists. You've probably heard venture capitalists say, oh, yeah, out of 10 deals, there's like 3 or 4 complete losers, 3 or 4 kind of in the middle, and maybe 1 or 2 that hit it out of the park, And so they're like prepared to lose a bunch of money. And I'm just never prepared to lose a bunch of money. So I only invested in companies that I thought absolutely could make 10 times my money. Now, I wasn't right all the time, but I never had a relaxed attitude about it. So of all my deals, I only had a couple of utter failures. And the rest of them were either huge, like 30, 40, 50 times my money, or, kind of in the middle. And I always hustled hard to help my companies get sold for 2 or 3 times their investment if they weren't going to be winners. But I did not give up easily. And entrepreneurs like that. Yeah,
that is a very different attitude from what we hear from most VCs.
Yeah, so I didn't the few times I lost money, I was really pissed. I mean, I was off the charts pissed about that. And I did, as I said earlier, I did focus on what I know, which for me was data networking and enterprise software.
Right.
And, at Foundation, I didn't do Netflix, but I knew Reed Hastings from when we backed him at Pure Software. So I was okay to do something like Netflix because that was pretty obvious. But I didn't do consumer stuff normally.
Okay. Well, Kathryn, what are you going to do next now that you're not a VC anymore?
I didn't plan this. It just sort of came to me. But I've helped guys start venture firms, help them develop their strategy, help them raise money because I know where all the limited partners are. And so the first firm I worked with was Mike Maples and Ann Miraco at
Floodgate.
Yeah. And of course I create my own investment opportunities because then I get to invest. And I like that a lot.
That's a great team, by the way. We
love those guys.
Yeah.
And in fact, it was just Mike when I started, and then he hired Ann. And then I've just more recently in the last year helped Pejman Mar. Do you know those guys?
I don't know them yet.
Oh, you got to meet these guys. Pejman Nozad and Mar Hershenson.
Okay.
And they have a really neat portfolio, but they've only been at Radin for about a year and a half. And then I'm currently working with another guy who it's not a firm yet. And it's curious, actually, that 2 of the firms I've helped start have a woman partner. And though I didn't do those deals because they were women, I don't believe in that. I did them because they're good. But consider this. Both of these women are PhDs from Stanford, both in really technical subjects.
Mm-hmm.
Ann Miraco has not had that much operating experience, but she knows everybody at Stanford. And Mar Hershenson, the other woman at Pejman Mar, she has a PhD in circuit design and has done 4 startups and amazing.
So it may be that these rare birds, these women that have really serious technical backgrounds, are starting to seek you out.
I don't know. The truth is, I think I sought them out. My smartest people list is still like pasted to my wall. And Mike Maples and Mark Hershenson are both on that list. So there you go.
Kathryn, it's been a real pleasure talking with you. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for the publishing the commencement speech. I think that's got great advice and a really interesting story. So best of luck to you in your next thing, and let us know when you can announce the company that or the fund that you're helping start next.
Oh, the third one, yeah. Well, I think before that I'll be announcing my Battle Mountain Cabernet.
A new wine. Well, that sounds very interesting.
Yeah. Well, if there's an app, we'll write about it.
Okay, thank you. It's fun talking to you guys.
Kathryn, it's been great talking with you. Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Well, this has been another episode of What to Think, VentureBeat's technology news podcast. As always, you can find us online at VentureBeat.com. This has been Dylan Tweeney and
Kia Kokolacheva.
Catch you next week, everyone.